Rob McFeely, CEO of Octiga here. We're getting a lot of queries recently from our partners and MSPs about a new wave of breach attacks, how to mitigate those, and how to identify those and how to react quickly around those to Office 365. Many of them are based on MFA attacks, MFA, man in the middle, steal the token, or social engineering attacks. I'm just going to go through a few areas of things that you can do both proactively and reactively within Octiga to mitigate these. Obviously, we have, to start with, if it's an MFA attack, it may have come through some kind of phishing. It may have come through some kind of link that they clicked that they thought they were logging into a Microsoft environment, and you might want to take a look at the safe links policies within Microsoft 365. You might want to take a look at also the standard default anti-phishing policy. It's got quite a few parameters in here around helping people identify when something's been spoofed or where something is not from the sender that it's supposed to be from. I would also recommend parts of Microsoft that enhance safe links, which can be an additional license. Those can be quite useful ways of mitigating that initial phishing if indeed the risk did come from there. Of course, locking down certain protocols such as SMTP, and setting up overrides so that can be managed in a way that you get a completely green screen, even though some users like printers might have SMTP turned on and others don't. But particularly around multi-factor authentication, I would be looking at particular user risks. So firstly, you want to make sure your MFA is rolled out properly. Octiga have a tool to enable you to make sure that MFA is rolled out properly and that device enrollment is good. Because you can enable conditional access policies, but no users might enroll in it. Or you might have users that are never used, admins that are never used, shared mailboxes that have sign-in directly enabled, and things like that where they will show up as risks. And you want to mitigate those. And you can use our MFA analysis to see, who's enrolled in MFA, who has it turned on, is it coming through conditional access policies, is it coming through, what are the authenticator types, is it SMS, is it Microsoft Authenticator, and you can run this as a report and work yourself down to a point where MFA is completely rolled out. Of course, if it really is a very well-engineered phishing attack, it might, as you say, get past that, and what we're seeing in some of these recent MFA attacks. In which case, I want to do a number of other things. I want to be cleaning up my accounts, making sure that you have no admins with mailboxes. Luckily, this is our tenant, and luckily we don't have any, because if an account is breached, we really don't want that to be an admin, and we want to be separating those out, and Octiga will give you the tooling to split those out. We don't have superfluous admins and admins that we don't necessarily want. We might want our break glass account, in which case we make an exception for that one, but we might want this one to be personalized and not sharing around the password for that. Not making sure that we don't have dormant accounts, dormant admins, just generally doing a cleanup. And any account that you don't want, make sure you select it, and make sure you select it for offboarding, or creating a baseline around it to manage these things, which you can do all through Octiga. And you could standardize this offboarding and make it really easy for your one engineers to really clean up those tenants, because that's one of the steps that's quite often overlooked. People put the policies in place, but the user batch is not as narrowed down in terms of risks as it should be. Other areas I would look at the dark web checks, the pwned checks to see if any users are on these breach lists out there, and indeed if there's passwords that have been spilled in those breach lists, and if they haven't had password change events since those pwned events, which we will highlight. Applications, we can run an application report which analyze all the Azure Active Directory listed applications, see if we can see anything unusual in there. This is a static check. We'll also show new applications being registered in our monitoring separately for a reactive element to this. But the inbox rules is another great example of this. So for example, it'll highlight rules existing on the tenant where you might have something strange, like somebody moving something to an RSS subscriptions folder or something like that, and you want to turn off those rules and lock down that account. That's a great thing when you've onboarded the tenant, to clean up those rules and get it back to that green screen. If it's something that's happening as it goes, and you've missed, somehow they've still got through, which can happen. Let's face, you need defense in depth. That's where Octiga really comes into its own, and we can do our monitoring. And this is going to pull from the entire audit log. So this is license agnostic. It's going to pull all the event types. It's going to highlight risks. It's going to highlight rule creation, role elevation, access from unusual locations. It's not only going to do that, but when you do have unusual activity, and you, for a region you don't have a rule for, and we have a full suite of rules: geo rules, location rules, IP rules, ISP rules. They can be time bound, but you can take a look at a breach, quickly analyze it with your L1 engineers, and see, maybe what files were accessed during that potential breach. Was there an inbox rule created, which will highlight for you? Was there a role elevation? So I guess what I'm saying is there's not one solution fits all here. It can be multiple things. It's kind of defense in depth, and it's a nuanced approach. But Octiga really try to help people with that, with best practice followed by simplicity for your L1 engineers. I hope this helps, and please do reach out to us if you have any questions around any of this.